I think some people get confused when they learn about the freedom model and they hear us say that there's no such thing as addiction. And so what I want to talk about today is what is addiction. If it's not a disease, if it's not something that happens to you that compels you to use uncontrollably, if it isn't characterized by involuntary substance use, then what is it? We're not saying when we say addiction doesn't exist that people don't struggle. We're not saying that people don't become enamored of some certain substance or activity or whatever it is that they feel addicted to. You can absolutely feel addicted. You can absolutely feel like you can't live without this substance or activity. And that's what addiction is. It's a very strong preference for a feeling, for us, the way a substance makes us feel more than anything, for an activity, the way an activity makes us feel. Because sometimes it's all about the ritual. Sometimes it's about the feeling that you get when you use the substance or when you go do the activity. So the question becomes, people eventually stop when they want to stop. But the question is, what if they know they should stop, but they don't want to? Right? We've all been there, whether it's a relationship that we're in with someone or an activity that we're engaging in that we know we're doing too much of because it's harming us in some way. Maybe we have to hide it from our spouse, or maybe it's hurting us financially, or maybe it's hurting our job because we're not feeling well in the morning to go to work, or maybe we're taking time away from our family to go do this activity, or we're taking time away when we could be using that time for something else that we think would be more beneficial to us. So what happens when you get to that point where you're like, I want to stop? What usually happens is we start to focus on the negatives. We start to focus on the consequences. Why don't I want to stop when I know if I test positive for heroin again, I'm going to lose my kids? Why don't I want to stop when I know if my husband finds out that I'm gambling some of our money away? Why don't I want to stop? Well, that's what you figure out. That's what the freedom model can help people to figure out, is what it is that I really like about this, where I know that there's these costs out here and they could be very, very high. You know, let's look at having an affair. Let's look at that. I know there's these costs. I know my spouse could find out, and I don't want to lose my spouse. I used to say, why don't people just leave their spouse? But the truth is, why don't drinkers, if your spouse wants you to stop drinking and you want to keep drinking, well, you want both. It's the same for a lot of these different activities. You want both. So the key is, let's figure out what feeling I'm getting from this. Let's figure out if this activity is doing for me what I want it to do. And if it's a quick thrill, maybe there's another place I can get that. But sometimes it's the taboo of it that's the thrill, right? Sometimes it's the thought that my spouse doesn't want me to do this, so I'm going to keep doing it. It makes it that much more attractive. This is the way I exert my independence. Nobody's going to tell me what to do, right? I think anybody who's been in a long-term committed relationship can relate to that feeling. Like, I have to exert my autonomy. We call that drinking at people or doing drugs at someone, because you're like, nobody's the boss of me. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. So there are all these different possibilities. In chapter 4, we talk about the reasons people prefer substances. And we use substances specifically. But if you're looking at another behavior, you can add to that list of the reason you prefer that behavior. Maybe you're not talking about substances. Maybe you're talking about gambling or shopping or have affairs. Maybe you're talking about those things. There's a reason, there's something you're getting from it. And the key is to figure out what that is and then start to explore the possibility that I can be happier doing something different. Making a change. Start exploring in your mind what it would feel like to not have this thing here. To not have this thing maybe between you and your spouse. Explore what that might feel like. Explore what it might feel like that you're going to have some money in your pocket. I'm not going to spend my money on drugs. I'm not going to spend my money on gambling. I'm going to have some money in my pocket. What can I do with that money that maybe bring me more happiness in the long run? If you focus on the negatives, if you focus on, I don't want these negative consequences, that typically doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a very short-term motivator. It may motivate you for a little while, but eventually those benefits will win out in your mind and you'll be willing to pay the costs again. It's like buying that $5 latte as opposed to making coffee at home. $5 latte. There's something that feels pretty great about it. But then if I start exploring the fact that, boy, I could save, if I had to buy a $5 latte every day, over the course of 7 days, that's $35. If I make coffee at home, maybe I'm saving $30. What could I do? What could I do with that $30 a week that adds up to? You start thinking of the benefits of the change. That's where people make changes, is they focus on the benefits of making the change. So if you're at that point where you're like, I want to stop, that's how you get over that hump, is you really honestly figure out what you like about it, what makes it worth the costs, and then you explore the possibilities of what would be the benefits of changing. Keep the costs completely out of it. Keep the consequences completely out of it. Just take them out of your brain and store them away for a while you explore the benefits of making the change. And that's my quick lesson for today. Thanks.